Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keels Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
It's not every day that I get a chance to speak to someone who I have known for years, call a brother from another mother, and is also a world traveler, an amazing father, and someone who really enjoys making a positive impact and contributing to others. And also, this is the gentleman who about a year ago was sitting where I'm sitting today on episode 435, and he is the one that helped to bring Billy Keels back to the microphone on this side of the microphone. And I'm super excited to welcome today the gentleman who is not only a two-time best-selling author, books like Exit to Excellence, You're Next. He's also got an amazing podcast himself. He's the host of Your Next podcast. He's got all kind of frameworks, all kind of different things that he's going to talk to us about. But the most important thing is his name is Mr. Jerome Myers, and I want to welcome him back as the only other person who has now been here 3 times. He is coming for my guys. Want to welcome to today's episode of the Going Long podcast, Mr. Jerome Myers. Jerome, welcome to the show, man.
All day. Man, I don't know what to do. I'm so happy to be here. When you guys reached out and it's like, hey, we're thinking about guests, I was like, well, I got to make sure I'm the first one.
Yes.
I like first mover advantage. And so grateful to have the invite. I know how rare they are to get an invite to come on this podcast. The top 1.5% in the world. I mean, come on, man. Who does it better than you guys, man? It's so good to be with you.
We are just one step at a time, man. One step at a time. And so, this is 1, 2, 3. Is this 4 times?
If I get credit for interviewing you.
Yes, you do. You absolutely do. And by the way, just being here and sharing mic time with you is amazing. I also get face-to-face time with you, which is also a blessing in itself. But I want everybody else to get a chance to know you. I know they can go back and check out episode 435, where you did a masterful job in helping me to get back here to be on this side of the microphone, which I thank you eternally for you helping me with that. And I know that nowadays you are really focused on helping individuals that you will call founders, because everybody talks to them a lot about, they're talking to them about all of the money. They're using really amazing formulas and their ROIs and their EBITDAs and their CAC and all this other kind of stuff. But you realize that nobody really wants to help them understand what is their identity. And I think that that is absolutely powerful. And you yourself, who has been in a highly influential, multiple 8-figure corporate business role, to also being able to work with and help others that are 8, 9-figure kind of things. I really want you to help us understand is, who is Jerome Myers?
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT this a while back. I was struggling. I was like, who am I without the money? Because, I think it's a core concept when you take away the things, the accoutrements, you take away the watches, as you pick with me all the time about, and the cars, the houses, the cash, and what's left. And, not that AI is the end all be all, but it said, well, you're an amazing partner and a father and a son. You're a friend, one who actually cares about how people are doing and not what they can do for you. And it went on to really dig into values. And so if I had to sum it up, I would just use an affirmation, and you kind of alluded to it in the intro. And it is, I want everyone I come in contact with to be better because of our encounter. If I'm remembered that way, if that's the essence of the experience, then I think I will have done well.
You're on that path for sure. I can attest to that. And so today, as you're on the path and you're making impact and contributing, whenever I think of you, I think of contribution, right? Because that's one of the biggest things that I have personally been able to grow as a result of. And so, but there are some individuals who also too, I mean, I alluded to a little bit, but I know there was a certain point in your life, we're going to come back to what you're doing today, but there was a moment in your life when, a lot of what you were doing was the identity that you kind of gave yourself was related to roles and related to just things that you were doing in the day to day. And at a certain point, you had a choice to make. Like, hey, I think everybody that's here and is watching and is listening, they know that, for the large part, I came from a very working class family, U.S. working class family, and watched my parents work 2 different jobs. And so I always wanted to stay in the corporate role and the race and all that kind of stuff. And I did it really, really well for a long time. Then I got to a certain point that I had a choice, and I could either live the corporate lifestyle or not. And I really enjoyed mine. Just chose to make make a different path or choose a different path. Can you talk to someone who may not have seen or heard from you, kind of that path as that corporate warrior, that high achiever? And then you got to a point and said, hey, maybe I want to do something else.
Yeah. I'll never forget January 13th, 2015, where I started a new division for a Fortune 550 company. We had $0 in revenue. It was me and one other person in the shop. We have our first meeting with the client. They hand over the file, and we're off to the races. I look up at the end of September, we got 175 people on the team. Get to the end of the year, 30% profit margins on $20 million in rev. December 24th, I get a phone call, and it goes something like this. Hey, Jerome, we're going to lay half the team off. Like, yeah, that's not the right answer. We'll need them next year. We're going to continue to grow. It's like, yeah, this isn't a discussion. I'm informing you of a decision. And it was at that point I realized I wasn't actually an entrepreneur, even though I only talked to people every other week and saw them once a quarter. So I spent the week between Christmas and New Year's figuring out who was going to stay and who was going to go. And I promised myself I'd never do it again. But I also, in the same breath, said they're making me do it. I gave away my agency, Billy. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, was a challenge. And so it was at that point where I was like, well, how do I make it so that the buck stops with me? And I just kept asking myself that question over and over and over again. And I'll never forget, it was like late January, early February. We're having the all hands meeting with the team that was still going to continue the journey. And I apologized to them and said, hey, I should have been a better leader, blah, 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 blah. Sorry for the folks that are gone. You're still here because of your performance. We're really appreciative of you. And they just kind of looked at me, dazed and confused, because I don't think they'd ever seen somebody take responsibility in that way. And maybe they felt like I shouldn't be the one taking responsibility, whatever the case was. And so that kind of struck me as well. And so we get to November of the next year's, the week before Black Friday, and I pull the team together. I say, hey guys, I don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of the year, but don't spend all your money on Black Friday. Huge holiday here in the US for those of you across the pond. And a lot of times people spend or overspend because they want to make good on those deals. And so I just felt all my leadership credibility ooze out on the floor in that conversation. And I had a 3-hour drive home from that meeting, and it just kept rolling it around in my head. What am I doing? Why doesn't the buck stop with me? Why am I telling people who are postponing and changing their life plans to help work on this initiative that I don't know what's going to happen? And I know deep down in my soul I'm not the final decision maker. And so I decided to exit corporate, man. And we went on this run. We started fixing and flipping houses. Then we bought apartment buildings, and We had a few exits along the way, and I learned very quickly that nobody actually cares about the real estate. Um, and it was a pretty lonely existence because the only time I heard from people is if they wanted to complain about their unit or they wanted to know when they were going to get their dividend check. And none of those things were where I wanted to be remembered. Those things weren't part of my legacy. Although I have set this ambitious goal to be one of the largest housing providers in the market that I live in. And so again, there was a pivot. And when I was in that pivot, it was, well, what do I actually miss? Like, what actually matters? And the only thing that I could come up with was people coming into my office and saying, hey, I couldn't have done that without you. And then I just started chasing that. And what it looks like today is eliminating suffering for founders, business owners. We watch 75% of people exit their companies and regret it. And for the life of me, I can't understand how that is the promise for somebody who dedicates 15 to 50 years of their life building an enterprise only to regret that they parted ways with it.
So helping to stop pain, eliminate pain, and you've just taken us through this kind of where you started to where you are today.
Right.
And I know that there's a lot of, you mentioned that it felt like your agency was taken away because you were in a role, you saw an entire division, like literally explode in positive results. Then you had to detract it. Sure, it was more continue maintaining profitability. That's one of the things that has to happen with the machine, right? And then at the same time, you chose that like, this is not the life for me because the agency, one of the aspects you talked about. But I'm just curious if you had, because there's some patterns that I start to recognize, but if you had this notion or this voice that maybe was calling you over time, leading up to that, saying, hey, look, you have these amazing skills. There's something that you can also be doing, not just within the constructs of what you're doing and your 9 to 9, as I like to call it. But did you have that kind of voice that was calling you for a little while? Hey, Jerome, there's something else you can also be doing? Or was it just the pain of what you were going through at that moment that said, you don't want to be involved in this?
So what was really interesting is in college, my sophomore year, me and my buddy Duran were sitting on the stoop and we were doing math. I was paying $395. I had 2 roommates paying the same thing. He lived downstairs. Exact same thing happened in his apartment. And when we multiplied it across the complex, the guy was making $750,000 a year, but we never saw him or talked to him. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, well, you can decouple your time from money. This is interesting. But I grew up the son of a soldier and a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have any idea on how you buy multi-million-dollar real estate. And so I spent my career in engineering and project management trying to figure out how to get back to the real estate. And so it'd been calling. I just didn't know how to do it. And I still hadn't met the people to do it. And even upon my exit, I still didn't know the people that could help me do it. But I'd been doing some private money lending. So that took me into the fix and flip world. And then from the fix and flip world, I got kind of pulled up to the majors from there. But there was that calling from college and the voice was always running. And then once I got there, it seemed like that was an illusion, right? Like this whole concept of, make money, don't have any time obligations, this passive income thing that everybody touts and offers. It ended up showing me how meaningless life can be when you aren't in service. And, somebody may say, well, you're in service of the people who rent from you. Yeah, okay. But like we were managing a manager. Like the time commitment, the obligation related to the real estate was really, really small. And then if you're in acquisition mode or disposition mode, there might be some intensity there. But for all intents and purposes, like you're just kind of floating aimlessly. And that to me is a bit of a purgatory, because I believe that we've been placed here to serve. And so a lot of people have the talk about purpose, but what we boiled it down is purpose is two P's: the people you serve and the problem you solve. And I wasn't doing either one of those in the real estate. I guess I could say, oh, well, it's helping my partners make money. That's unfulfilling. And then providing housing for folks. Okay, great. But I was so far removed from the end client that, I didn't actually get to see the impact that we were making. So then the voice was, well, does your life actually matter? Mm-hmm. Right? And how can your life matter? How can you get it such that when people are carrying your casket, there's other people standing there like, I should be doing that? Or I like to say, are people going to fight over the opportunity to carry your casket? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to create or deliver that level of impact in the world.
And you're definitely on that. You are doing it, and you are on that path to continue to do it at even higher levels. And so, when you hear that voice, even before you knew that the voice was going to impact you later, this is a common theme that I begin to recognize, because that voice, when you begin to hear it, it doesn't ever go away. It's just a matter of, are you willing to take a moment to listen and interpret it at that point in your life, like you did. And now you're continuing that journey, right? And one of the things that you were talking about before, because maybe someone's listening for the first time, when we talk about a founder and you helping to eliminate their pain, can you help us understand who is a founder for someone who may not know? And you talked about money, but then also potentially that founder that we talked about, looking for life beyond just the money. If you can describe that a bit for us, please.
Yeah. So a founder is someone who starts an enterprise. Some people say, oh, I'm the CEO, or I'm the president, or pick another title that sounds really fancy on LinkedIn. But the fact of the matter is, you had an idea and then you start an organization in order to execute that idea. So what we find outside of like the tech folk, it takes 15 to 50 years to build that to a place where it is independent. You can sell that cash flow that's created by the business to somebody else, and you can get a multiple on it. This is one of the largest opportunities for wealth creation that anybody can ever have. Many times I liken it to hitting the lottery. So you go from having a 0 or 2 in your bank account to having a multiple of zeros. And now you've got more money than you've ever had. You have more time than you've ever had. And you don't have anything to use your talent against, because you've been using it against that enterprise. The pain comes in on 6 levels, and we call them the 6 centers of doubt. So it starts with self-image, then it goes up to relationships, from relationships to work, or the void that work was. Then there's health, prosperity, and significance. Most of the time when we're on these shows, we only talk about self-image and relationship just because they're the easiest to illustrate. Mm-hmm. So with self-image, most people who are founders talk about the company as if it's a part of them. And for all intents and purposes, if it's been around for 15 to 50 years, it is. Mm-hmm. You've had to be the chief evangelist. You had to tell everybody about it. You may have mortgaged your home to keep capital in the bank so that you could keep the thing going when you had a cash crunch, or if it didn't work the way you thought it was going to work in the beginning. And, your DNA goes into the culture, the people you hire, and so on and so forth. And so if you don't do the work to decouple your identity from the business, when you sell it, it's like experiencing a loss. Mm-hmm. Some people would say I'm losing a limb. Other people would say I just sold my baby. But there is this disconnection with the piece of you when that transaction happens. And then if we move out to relationships, just to get us a third of the way through the 6 centers, when we do this exercise called a 2C matrix in workshops, and we did 3 of them for Visage last week, what we find is of the 5 people you spend the most time with, 3 of them are typically connected to the business. And so imagine having 60% of your friends vanish in a single day. Very quickly, the loneliness sets in. Very quickly, you start to question if you matter or if anybody cares about you. And you find out that you didn't really have 5 real friends. You had 3 deal friends and 2 potentially real friends, although those 2 are usually the spouse and the children.
Yeah. So, as I'm hearing you talk about the 6 centers of doubt, that 60% in that example that you gave that are related to or connected to the business that has become a part of this founder's identity. And I'm also thinking, we have so many people that are watching and listening that the founders, and we're helping them to understand that. The question would be, well, you know what, Jerome, I'm not a founder yet. Yeah. Maybe that voice is calling me, but today I'm running a $200 million line of business across, 4, 5, 6 geographies, maybe 2, 3 different regions. Call it North America, Europe, and Northern Africa. How could this actually, what you're talking about, can that relate to me? Because I'm not in that founder space yet, but I'm pretty much running a really big business and probably bigger than many of the small type of founders. But I'm feeling like this could potentially be me tomorrow.
Yeah. So the great part about this is it's the same for anybody that's making a major transition. The first time I went through the founder's exit paradox was when I left the division, right? So, we go to 20 million, we've got a team of over 100. I walked out the door. I still lost 3 people associated with the business that were in my 5. I still didn't know what my identity was. I traded a company truck in for my own truck, but what did that actually mean? The people who wanted to talk to me so aggressively when I had the title didn't want to talk to me anymore. The people that I used to call every day weren't answering the phone or responding to the text messages as quickly. And so it's the exact same thing. We focus on founders because we think it's more intense with them, but the symptoms are the exact same thing, regardless of what transition you're making. And, my favorite example of this is my dad. My dad has been a public servant for close to 50 years now. And, when he started with military service and then went into postal service, and now he's a public official. And, his struggle in between each one of those transitions was very apparent for anybody that was paying attention. So, these experiences, while branded for founders, are universal for anybody that's going through a major transition as it relates to the way that they earn money.
And that now the penny drops, right? It's very, very helpful. And also reminds me, you're giving an example that I remember as I had stopped running. I ran about $100 million business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I've talked about that before, but I just remember when I exited stage left of corporate, right? Because my dad got sick. My phone stopped ringing. I was like, wait, hang on a second. Hang on, man. Every call is supposed to come through me. Everything's supposed to happen. And all of a sudden, for that little period of time, I didn't really necessarily know what to do. It was a very different feeling. So I appreciate you also bringing that home to help us understand like what you're doing, the way that you're contributing, the way that you're serving is also helpful for anyone who is going through any type of a transition. So, you talked about earlier, or I talked about it, your exit to excellence, right? We've talked about exits. We've talked about the transition, but when you talk about exit to excellence as a founder yourself, what does that mean?
Yeah. So we talked about the 75% of founders that regret their exit. Well, let's really dig into the math. I'm a recovering engineer, right? And so sometimes I pull out the math. I think you and I were doing math on a boat in St. Lucia at one point, but
yes, we were.
That's for a different story, right? So 1 in 10 businesses survives 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of those businesses, 2 that get listed for sale out of 10 actually transact, right?
Yep.
Of those 2 that transact, 70%, 75% of the founders regret it. So
when you say, and Jerome, just so we don't, just in case I know we got a lot of corporate folks, but just in case, when you say transact, when you bring us the numbers, just so we don't lose anybody.
Yeah. So people who own their companies go through this process of trying to sell it. There's only a 20% success rate in selling the business and getting paid for the company that you bought. And I think it's probably good to bring up the fact that there's only 3 ways out of a company once you start it. You sell it, you give it away, or you close it. And so the one that provides the most financial upside is selling it. And again, only 2 out of the 10 that go through this process of trying to sell or transact are successful. Then of those folks, 75% regret it. And so that leaves you, if we did the math right, about 4% of companies actually get to the place where they exit and they are happy about the decision to sell their company. And that's what I consider excellence.
You all did hear Jerome just say, and do the math. He walked us through it very, very diligently, kindly. 4%, you said, right, Jerome?
4%.
And you call that happiness, yeah?
Well, I think that's excellence, right?
Excellence.
If you're in the top 4%, top 5% of the world, right? And we're discounting the fact that only 10% make it to the place where they could even be considered for this, right? We're skipping over that. And we're just saying for the ones that actually go through the transactions, the ones that actually are successfully sold, that they are limited to 4% of getting to a place of enjoying it 1 year after. To me, with all of the folks who label themselves as exit planners running around, that's a failure in a lot of ways, right? There's only a 4% success rate. I don't think many people are taking that bet. And so what we're seeing is people, specifically baby boomers, who are holding on to their companies, right, indefinitely. I'll die in a meeting. They'll pry my dead fingers off of a keyboard. Like, we hear that a lot with attorneys and financial advisors. Or, I've worked so hard when I was younger and didn't make any money. Now I get paid so well for the work that I do. Why would I ever leave? Something else that comes up for us. So, I don't believe that that's what we're built for. I don't believe that's our destiny. I don't think that's the legacy that we truly desire to have. So when you put all those things together, we sit in a space, in this place of, well, what does it actually mean? And I think there's a couple of things that go into that. So there's a percentage, right? There's the rarity of the fact that you can actually enjoy it. I was having dinner with Damon John maybe 2 years ago. We were in Miami, and I was like, man, what does it mean to exit to excellence? You sold FUBU for whatever multiple times. And what does it actually mean? And he's like, well, you exit on your terms. Okay. That's difficult. You get your price. You're prepared for a void because you know that you're going from something to potentially nothing, and that you know what you're going to do next. Those were 4 things. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And as I've done a lot of work with founders and more research, what I found is the thing that's most important for somebody that's leaving, whether it's their corporate job or selling their company, is knowing what you're going to do next, right? It is exiting to something instead of exiting from. And so many people are so focused on what they're exiting from that they say, oh, I'll figure out what I'm going to exit to. And they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to do nothing for a year, or I'm going to do nothing for 6 months. And in that time, they go into a valley, and it's often filled with quicksand. And many times they need somebody to help them out, because the more that they struggle in the quicksand, the deeper they get.
This is so this is as we talk about contribution and we talk about you being able to have this insight, and not just because of the fact that one, that you've studied and you've understood the exit planning, exit and exit planning as it exists, correct? You've done it yourself at a corporate level, outside of corporate, and you are helping others today. Now, I also happen to know that you talk about this on a global platform. This is something that you've gone to talk about in other countries. I'm also curious, is this something that is just a US phenomenon in terms of the those that are arriving to the excellence level of exit, or is this something that you're also seeing globally?
So the very interesting thing about the global marketplace is the majority of the businesses are family owned and family held, and they're moving them in between generations. In the US, we're finding that the next generation don't want to be in the family business. And so that founder is faced with the challenge. Do I sell it and spread the money across folks? Do I close it? Or do I still try to give it to the children that have said they don't want anything to do with the business, mainly because they saw how it has treated their parents, and they're like, there's no way that I'm going to subject myself to that. On a global scale, there's more, it seems to be more duty with the next generation, and they just kind of gladly step in to the family business. And the issue that they experience is a dilution issue, because each generation typically has multiple kids, and then it's like all these people are eating off of the business, and if the business isn't growing or the children aren't finding ways to contribute in a meaningful way, they get trapped in a business that can't sustain all of the shareholders.
And I can imagine that that's usually not a, let's say it's, and just to also bring that to what Jerome's talking about, there's, you have a family business. There's let's just say it's a one box, and that one box with one person, maybe, or two people in the beginning, that's one thing. But that same box that doesn't potentially grow to a much larger box, but then has 3 children for each person, that's 6. And then those children have other people. And so as you find, it's more and more people with the same size of the box, hence the dilution that Jerome's talking about. And that, that does bring it back home to what you were talking about in the very beginning. As a founder, you really have those 3 different options. You either sell it, you close it, or you give it away. And so there's a number of, there aren't an infinite number of possibilities to be able to go through. So I appreciate you painting that picture. I want to keep talking to you forever and ever and ever and ever, of course. And I get to actually once we turn the mic off, but not today, at a different time. But Jerome, before I wrap up, I guess I'm curious in terms of like what you are seeing, or the people that you are helping to eliminate the pain. What is something that we should know about founders, or anyone who's making that transition? Let's not just keep it to founders. I know your specialization is there, but also you are able to and do help those eliminate pain that are in corporate scenarios as well. If you can just share something, maybe I don't want to call it a prediction, but just something that you're noticing as well that we haven't highlighted here today that would be useful for our audience to know.
Yeah, we talked about it already, but I think it's worth repeating. Exiting 2 is the most important thing you can do. And I watch so many people say, I got enough money, I'll figure it out. And they kind of drift in the sea of freedom. And for some people, it's an ocean of freedom. And they don't know how to sell their ship. And so they're just getting blown around. And what looked like freedom becomes a prison, because they feel trapped in a space, in a place where they don't know how they're going to answer the question of what's next. The money is not the solution. And this is probably actually a good addition to this conversation. So if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's 5 different levels to it. Money only solves the first 2 levels. And once you solve your money problem, all the problems that you're going to be trying to solve are in levels 3, 4, and 5. And if you really get fancy, level 6, which isn't actually on a pyramid, it floats above, it's called transcendence. And so what I believe is happening more often than not is people are trying to solve problems that can't be solved with money. And this requires a totally different frame of thinking. It requires a different level of vulnerability in order for you to get the support that you need to get to the outcome that you truly desire. And I don't think most people are even beginning to think about things in that way.
Which is why we're very fortunate, and all of our viewers, all of our listeners, everyone that's part of the Going Long family that is watching and listening today are now aware, also aware of you bringing this to our minds, thinking about what you are getting ready to or going to exit to is a great mindset, a great way to prepare yourself, right? And then, of course, you're part of our family. And now they know that they can reach out to you. And so, Jerome, I guess in wrapping things up, even though I don't want to, man, I want to ask you a question. Today, I'm not going to ask you about traveling to Europe.
I'm going to come to Barcelona one day.
Okay. Hey, you everybody heard it. Everybody heard it.
It's pretty high on the list.
We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. So it's been a couple of times here now. And then one of the things that I'm also recognizing is that if we have a chance to tell ourselves, our future selves things, what is it that we would say? Now, I plan on being here for quite a while, the podcast being here for quite a while. And I would really love for you to be able to think about today's conversation, be able to reflect upon it, and leave a message for your future self, because you've been through a number of different life events that have helped to get you here. And each time you become much more aware, much more conscious of what's happening. And so if you could think about what you would like to leave the message for your future self, but Jerome, just 3 years out, not a year, not 5 years, 3 years out. What's the message that you want to leave for yourself that you know that the Going Long family can also benefit from? And it gives us something to come back to 3 years from now.
I'm really grateful, Billy, to have this opportunity. And I look just over your head and I see a dragon egg right above your head. And it's a gift that I gave you in St. Lucia a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And the theme of that event was Tame Your Dragons. And I believe that taming your dragons is the key to allowing you to live the life of your wildest dreams. And so whatever the thing is that you're carrying guilt about, you need to be forgiven for, you're scared other people of knowing about, like being able to tame those dragons is the thing that's going to give you the freedom that you need in order to make the impact that you want to make on the planet. And I watch so many people hide because they're scared somebody's going to find out. Somebody might know that this happened to or for me, depending on your perspective. And even I fit in that boat when I think about my divorce and I think about being a dad and not being in the house with my kids. It's one of those things that, it's tough. It's tough.
So as you help us reflect and also talk to yourself, with yourself, for yourself, being able to think about, now you make me think back to, well, I can't even believe it's only been, I guess that was 3 years back now, St. Lucia. So to be able to recognize and tame those dragons, which as I think about that, can't believe this conversation has already gone by so fast. Helping founders, individuals, let's say, helping growth-minded leaders to be able to eliminate pain, right, is something that you continue to do well. You continue to do well in the area of helping others to exit to excellence, which is fantastic. You've given us some very concrete examples as to how you are helping the global vision that you have of your space, the 4%, the 4%ers that you also can help move to the next level, and being able to do it in a way that is helping not only people solve their problems, but do it in a way that is hyper focused on the individual. And so it makes me think about what you talked about in the very beginning, right? As we think about you as a friend, as a father, as a partner, as a son, and the things that we will continue to understand and know you for, as someone who continues to contribute, who continues to make impact and eliminate pain. I would like to say, I really appreciate you joining the podcast today. And I also want to give you an opportunity to help our Going Long family understand, you know what? Jerome's sharing some goodness. I really want to find out more about what he's doing. I mentioned the podcast at the beginning, but you got your own podcast, your next podcast. Talk to us about how we can get in touch with you, man.
Yeah. I think the best place for the folks to go is LinkedIn, man. We're there every day, multiple times a day, engaging with folks. And, you know, you'll be able to see all the different things going on from there. That's our hub. And, you know, we're on the other social medias, but that's by far our biggest following and where we're most active. And so Jerome Myers on LinkedIn in Greensboro. And I think we're the only ones, because we're the only ones talking about exits.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Also to everyone, when you reach out to Jerome and you reach out to him, as he just mentioned, on LinkedIn, please let him know that you have already invested time learning more about Jerome, how he can potentially help you to diagnose. And I know he can, not potentially, he can help you, but also getting an opportunity to know you. But let him know that you've already invested time getting to know him. All right. It's great for you. It's great for him. And that way you can continue the conversation in a much more efficient and effective manner. So, Mr. Myers, I would like to say from the very bottom of my heart that I really appreciate you deciding once again to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, my friend. Ciao, ciao.